everyone to CBT Academy. Are we ready to learn? Because I certainly am. But first, hello again, it's me, it's Miranda, and I am back after my 2-week Christmas break. So, what was that at the back? A little bit, am I feeling refreshed? Absolutely not, but here we are making another video. And today I thought we could focus on goal setting according to cognitive behavioural therapy principles. So some of you might not know that CBT is based on like 10 core commandments, if you like, and one of them is being goal oriented. So they're like the OGs of goal setting. And in their mind, not all goals are created equal. In fact, if we want to stick to them and incorporate them into our lives, goals need to fulfill these set of criteria. They need to be operationalized, concrete, and realistic. And if you're a bit like, what? Then that's absolutely fine. Someone actually came up with a much easier to digest acronym, SMART, which helps us to set goals which fulfill those 3 criteria. So I'm going to talk you through how to set SMART goals so that you can smash the life out of your goals in 2021. So I'm going to split this video into 2 halves. The first half, I thought we could do a little worked example. So set a goal, take it and turn it into a SMART goal together, work through it. Well, not really together, I'm going to be doing the work, but you know, you can take the credit afterwards. And then the second half, I'm going to be talking about the SMART goals which I've set myself for the New Year's. I mean, it could be interesting to you, but primarily it's because I'm in isolation right now and I could really use the company. So are we ready to go? Let's get started then. So let's begin with our worked example. So taking a goal, turning it into a SMART goal. So we'll take the example of Alex. Alex is our archetypal millennial, and they walk in and they say, for 2021, my goal is to live my best life. And first of all, can I just say,
hey queen.
But secondly, and more importantly, one of the things that I do like about this goal is that it's very positively framed. I think for all of us, when we set ourselves goals, we can fall into the trap of saying things like, I want to stop doing this, and I want to see less of that, and it can kind of all just be like a bit insulting and self-flagellating, and I think it's much better instead to think about the things that we want to see more of, or the positive future that could await us, because it just makes the whole process a bit more encouraging, I think. So that's just like a little tidbit to have on the back burner, but let's take this goal and make it SMART. So let's start with the letter S. S is for the way you stare at me. Okay, it's not going to be that kind of video. S actually stands for specific. So what that means is trying to drill down on what it is precisely that you want to change and you want to see different. So we've got the concept of living our best life, which is great, but like so many different things could fall into that. You know, is it about traveling more, spending more time with loved ones, going to parties, wearing ostentatious clothes, dyeing your hair pink? I don't know. Those are all things I've pulled off the top of my head. So it's about trying to be very kind of strategic and understanding what it is that's important to you. And I think a good way of doing this is trying to do an evaluation of where I'm at right now versus where I could be in the future. So if I was saying to Alex, if we were trying to work through this together, I'd say, okay Alex, let's have a look at life at the moment. What is it about how things are going that makes you say that you're not living your best life? Versus, okay, in the future, if you were living your best life, what would that look like? Like, what would I be able to see you doing that's different? And that can help yield just a couple of things that Alex may want to focus on. So in this imaginary case, Alex says to me, do you know what? I work like an actual dog. I want to spend more time doing leisure activities. I want to improve my work-life balance and tip that ratio. Now, we could get more specific than this, but I think for the purposes of, this'll do. And we're going to crunch it down in the steps to come. So let's move on to the letter M. M is for measurable. So this is the idea that your goals can be measured, they are quantifiable, and you can track them in some way. So I'm gonna take Alex's goal and make it measurable, and then we'll talk about why this is important. So Alex talks about wanting to improve their work-life balance. And you might say, well, like, that sounds reasonable. Like, run off with that. No. We need to make it measurable. So one way of doing that is to track the number of hours spent working, for example. And they say, I work 80 hours a week, including commuting time. This is too much. Their goal then is to reduce this to 40 hours. That's something that's super easy to track and to work towards. Why is doing that important? Well, a couple of reasons. Number one being that if you don't quantify it, like, how do you know that you've ever achieved it? Like, if you say to yourself, okay, something that I want to focus on is my cardiovascular fitness. Great. But if you don't quantify it in some way, how do you know you can tick that off and move on to something else? Like, if you say to yourself, I want to get to a place where I can run for 30 minutes without stopping, measurable. Good. We know when we can move on from this goal. Number two, I would say, is because humans have terrible memory for things, and often our mood can cloud how we perceive our progress. And so I think it's really important to kind of have a track of how things are actually going. So say, for example, you have 6 days of like smashing the life out of your goals, and on the 7th day, it feels like you've taken 50 steps back. You're so much more likely to view your progress negatively when it's just not the case. And if you've got something like that's in black and white, on paper, on your phone, some trackable kind of diary, you can actually see the wood for the trees and show yourself the actual progress that you are making, which can be really invigorating and encouraging. I'd say the third thing is, because goals, important goals, take time, and we achieve them through small, incremental, tiny little steps. And so when we actually get to the point of achieving our goals, often it isn't this like big like woohoo moment, because we've been like slowly moving towards them and kind of like adjusting our vision along the way. It doesn't feel like this big moment anymore. And so that's why I think it's a really good idea to have like a quantifiable version of where you started, so you can then compare the two and just show yourself how far you've come, which can be like very validating and so much more of an exciting moment. Okay, we made it measurable. Now let's move on to letter A. A is for achievable. So this is the idea that you're setting yourself a goal, which is going to be a challenge, but it's not so far out of reach that you're setting yourself up for failure. It's also a really good opportunity to just assess what the obstacles might be to you achieving those goals and whether you have all the resources that you need. So let's take the case of Alex. So they're saying, I want to improve my work-life balance. The way I'm going to do that is quitting my job.
I'm resigning, everyone. I'm out of here. That's it. I'm gone.
Love the energy, love the spirit, but Alex, can we do that with a mortgage and a child? Perhaps not. So Alex says, okay, something that's a little bit more achievable in my grasp, I think, is to shrink down my working hours to around 40 hours a week. But Alex thinks, do you know what? If I've got the 10-hour weekly commute, I don't think that's realistic. I don't think that's achievable for me right now. I would have to drop that commute in order to squeeze everything into that time frame. And this is where you start to make an assessment. You know, do you talk to the boss to think about, can I work from home? Or do you start to amend that goal slightly so it is more achievable and it is more realistic given the constraints that you have? Luckily, in Alex's case, a global pandemic hit, so they were working from home anyway. Fantastic news for Alex, well done. Let's move on to R. R stands for relevant. So is this goal relevant to your life, to your values, and what's actually important? And I think this is really crucial because definitely on the subject of goals, it's really easy to get caught up in like society's expectations of you, what your best friend is doing, what people are doing on social media, and then like getting sucked into all of these different like goals and challenges and hustles, and it's like, who is this for and who is this benefiting? You know, you say like the classic one for women, like the goal to have a child before you're 30. It's like, is this something I want or is this something I'm told I'm wanting? So let's take the example of Alex. So if Alex said to me, talking about living their best life, and they say, I need to be traveling. I need to be in Dubai right now. That's my goal, 2021 Dubai. We pick that apart a bit more and they say, do you know what, actually, like, I've just been like on social media a lot and I've been scrolling through and everyone who's having fun seems to be in Dubai. And it's like, they might still choose to stick with that goal, but then it might also be a realization of it's not so much about Dubai and travel. I think it's more about connecting with things that are fun for me and more leisure activities. So with that wrapped up, let's think about T. T is for time limited. I would say this is one of the more straightforward aspects of the SMART acronym. It's just this idea that you need to have a time frame within which you would have liked to achieve said goal. And again, making this something that is going to be achievable. So thinking about Alex's case, so reducing that work week down to 40 hours. Realistically, are they going to have sorted that out by next Monday? Perhaps not. So they think, actually, that's something that I'm going to focus on over the next 3 months. And I think why having something time limited is so good is because it's really, really hard to work on something like
forever and ever, and it just feels like it's going on and on, and you just like don't really see an end point because it's
so hard to maintain your motivation and concentration on something that doesn't really have an end date, which feels somewhat in touching distance. So it can be really good to help kind of manage your energy levels and motivation. And I think it's also good to help you to think about what your work rate needs to be. So like, if I want to have achieved this in 3 months' time, what are the steps that I need to take to make this feasible? So in Alex's case, it might be, I need to have had a conversation with my supervisor about my work hours. I need to think about like hiring someone to help me actually. I need to think about how to improve my concentration and how to think about managing procrastination at work. All of those things combined is going to make sure that they are moving in the right direction and taking all the steps that they need to take. So I think we might have actually set a SMART goal together, guys. So we have gone from something which was a bit grey and nebulous of living one's best life, and I've made it really boring, to thinking about your working week and reducing your working hours. So well done me, but what is good is that Alex has got a much better chance of achieving that because it's something that is really tangible, concrete, and realistic for them. So, are we ready for part 2? Fantastic! So glad to hear it. So I am going to run you through my New Year's resolutions and how I took them from like vague, fuzzy goals into something that was smart, practical, and actionable. So let's start with number 1. So I knew I wanted to set something around self-care because I'm a bit of a self-care camel, to be honest. Like, I can just go without and just go on and on and on, withdrawing from that piggy bank without investing back in, which is just terrible practice, and I always end up somewhat suffering at the end. Another thing is that I really struggle to accept like nurturing kind of care. So like, say for another person, if they wanted to show me care and kindness, I'm like, help me with my to-do list, like don't give me a hug. And it's like the same with my self-care, like all of those things which are like, you know, journaling and affirmations and like going slow and like being gentle with oneself. Like, it makes me fundamentally super uncomfortable, and I thought that was maybe something that I could potentially address. However, given the year is how it is, and I'm not feeling fully charged, actually, I don't think that's a particularly achievable goal for me right now, because knowing myself, doing those things like affirmations, slowing down, being gentle with myself, that's gonna cause me a lot of discomfort to begin with. And right now, I just feel like I need something like rough and ready, tried and tested, that I can just incorporate every day, that I know does the job, and have this as a longer term goal when I'm feeling a little bit more replenished. So instead, I decided to think about doing 30 minutes of movement every single day, because that far and away has the biggest impact on my mental health. And to make it sort of achievable, it can range from anything between like a gentle stretch on the floor to like a heavy weight session at the gym when they open. And I thought, you know, I want to do 30 minutes, I want to do it every day for the year, because like, quite frankly, if I can't find 30 minutes for myself every day, then
the problem is bigger than I thought.
So number 2, I wanted to think about improving my digital relationship. So I think anyone who has lived through 2020 is feeling increasingly reliant on their phone. And it's like, that phone is the source of, you know, entertainment, social connection, feeling loved. And I think also I have become a lot more involved with social media in the latter part of last year. So, you know, I started this YouTube channel. Oh God, I still can't call it that, like cringes me out. I started getting involved in YouTube videos. I started an Instagram account, Twitter. And because of that, there were definitely days where just like, you know, all these notifications are popping off and you can like genuinely feel the dopamine burst in your brain, and it would just be like so overstimulating. And I'd get into bed at the end of the day and my brain would just be like... And I was listening to this podcast. I was like, can you count the number of hours in a day where you would need to physically move your feet in order to reach for your phone? And I was like, it's kind of none. Like, I sleep with my phone next to me. It's the first thing I reach for in the morning. When I'm going to work, it's in my pocket, in my bag. When I'm working from home, it's right on my desk. Like, I have no physical separation. And I realize like that's kind of the source of the problem, like this proximity issue. Because you can just like mindlessly turn it over, or you can see your phone flash. So I thought that was going to be like the little niche, the little kind of hook point that I was going to focus on. So the two things that I'm doing right now is setting myself a digital bedtime. So no phones after 9 p.m, not allowed, and also charging my phone away from my bed. So this kind of separation means that first thing in the morning, I reach for the water bottle instead of the phone. And it means that I don't just like dive in to like the social media world or like the incredibly depressing reel of news stories at the moment, which I think is having a beneficial impact on just how I'm feeling when I approach the day. And I've got like some additional steps once I've mastered that to then get me towards a screen time, which I feel is a little bit more palatable than where we are right now. The third thing that I want to think about is this concept of like treading gently on the world. So this is the idea, I suppose, like, you know, when you die, that you haven't left this like massive mark behind you. I mean, obviously leaving a mark in the hearts of the people who love you, but like not on the planet. And I really wanted to think about like trying to live a little bit more sustainably, a little bit more ethically, but thinking about that in a smart way, I was like, that is a minefield. That is a huge lifestyle overhaul if you're not careful. So how can we break that down so it's a little bit more specific, measurable, achievable? So I thought, because I don't know much about ethical living, to be honest, or like sustainability overall, how about every month I challenge myself to make one sustainable swap? So this is like my information gathering. So I will take a task or something that I do anyway and see if I can find a more eco-friendly version of it or a more sustainable version of it. So like in January, I'm going to be doing Veganuary, so I can try out lots of different food products that might be a more kind of ethical swap than the things that I consume right now. In the future, I might think maybe I can swap my shampoo and conditioner bottles for a plastic-free option. So this is very much, like I said, just my information gathering phase, so that longer term, the bigger goal is to live a more sustainable lifestyle, but hopefully finding swaps which I feel can fit into my life as it currently is, so that I stick with it and it's not something that's just like a phase and drops off because it's like not practical for me. So yeah, I've picked 3 things because, like I said, it's important to like prioritize goals and pick things that you feel are going to be important to you, but also so that you've got enough bandwidth to give them their due attention and focus. So yeah, I think that's everything I have for you this week. It's been great to be in front of the camera, and if you made it this far in the video, then thank you for keeping me company, because it's day I don't know what of my isolation, and quite frankly, this actually feels like I'm speaking to a friend. Oh, that sounded so lame. Okay, I'm gonna wrap it up for now. I wish you all the very best in the next week. Take care of yourself, and I look forward to speaking to you next week. Ciao for now.